Goblin launch detected.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further, as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. Or if you're in Canada like me, you can use the same promo code at Multizone to get 10% off your orders of singles. If cards aren't what you're looking for, Original Magic Art has playmats, tokens, and sweet art that you can use that same promo code to help you get 5% off your order there. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey gang, I just wanted to let you know about an upcoming Kickstarter campaign featuring the wonderful art of Alexis Bricot. Alexi was responsible for creating the art of Chandra, Liliana, Jace, Ajani, and Garruk back in 2007 in the new Lorwyn setting as a first wave of Planeswalkers. Since then, Planeswalkers have become an enormous part of the game and a staple in each new set. By backing this Kickstarter, you get access to premium black stitched edging playmats that are exclusive to this offer only, and it features extended artwork of those Planeswalkers you love. So if you're interested, please be sure to use my affiliate link down below. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is a bit of an old one, but with a fun twist, since MJ is playing Grimlock. They keep Yavimaya Hollow, Rootbound Crag, Forerunner of the Empire, Thundering Spineback, Samet the Tested, Garruk's Pack Leader, and Cultivate. Ben is playing Savra, keeping Dictate of Erebos, Kukusho the Evening Star, 2 Forests, Mosswort Bridge, Grim Backwoods, and Encroaching Wastes. Malcolm is playing Vish Kal, keeping a Reliquary Tower, 2 Plains, Unmake, Vault of the Archangel, Sudden Spoiling, and a Mirror Entity. Last but not least, Max is playing Kethis the Hidden Hand, keeping Untadake the Cloud Keep, Command Tower, Krosan Verge, Carador Ghost Chieftain, Selvala Explorer Returned, Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, and Survival of the Fittest. Malcolm wins an eye roll and starts us off. He plays a Plains. Max plays a tap Krosan Verge. Ben plays a Forest. MJ plays a tapped Rootbound Crag and passes. Malcolm plays another Plains and passes to Max. Max plays a Command Tower and taps 2 for Survival of the Fittest. Ben just plays a Tainted Wood and passes turn. MJ draws and plays a Yavimaya Hollow. Malcolm plays a Reliquary Tower for turn and casts a Chromatic Lantern. He then casts a Vampiric Tutor, losing 2 to go and find a card to put on top of his library. Max plays an Untadake the Cloud Keep and passes. Ben plays a Dakmor Salvage, passing. MJ draws and moves through their phases, having to discard down to hand size. Malcolm plays a Vault of the Archangel and casts Phyrexian Arena. He then passes to Max, who discards Carador at the end of turn, activating Survival of the Fittest to go and find Nissa Vastwood Seer, putting her to hand. Max plays a land for turn, and then casts Nissa, and as she enters, goes to find a forest to put to hand. Ben plays a forest for turn, and casts his commander, Savra, Queen of the Golgari. MJ draws and casts their first spell of the game with a Duskwatch Recruiter, and then passes turn. Malcolm untaps and draws 2 for turn, losing 1 life to the arena, and then casts a Grave Pact, and passes to Max, who at the end of turn activates the Survival again, discarding Ravos, Soul Tender, to go and find Rishkar to put to hand. Max plays a land for turn, and then casts Rishkar, who enters, and he puts a counter onto Nissa and himself and passes turn. Ben just plays a land and passes. On MJ's upkeep, since Ben did not cast any spells, their werewolf transforms into a Kralin Horde Howler. With no land to play though, they move to combat and swing at Malcolm for 3. They then pass turn, discarding Pyrohemia to hand size. Malcolm draws 2 and loses 1, and plays a land for turn. He then casts Hirobi, Death's Wail, and passes to Max. Max activates the Survival, pitching the Gritrog monster, and going to find Sigarda, Host of Herons. He also decides to crack the Krosan Verge while he searches, to find a forest and a plains card to put to field. Max untaps and casts Sigarda. In response, Ben sacrifices Savra to the Grim Backwoods to draw a card, and pays 2 life to have each player sacrifice a creature from her on-death trigger. With Malcolm sacrificing a creature, this triggers Grave Pact, causing the board to sacrifice yet another creature. Once that's all done, Max then casts Selvala, Explorer Returned, and passes. Ben plays a Mosswarp Bridge, which comes in tapped, and hides away a card. He then ends his turn by discarding Kakusho to hand size. MJ draws, and discards, and passes. Malcolm draws and loses 1 on his upkeep, and then taps out to cast his commander, Vish Kal. He passes to Max, who once more at the end of turn, uses Survival to pitch Miri, and goes to find Reki. Max plays his own copy of Mosswarp Bridge, which comes in tapped, and he hides away one of his top 4. He then casts his commander, Kethis the Hidden Hand, and with the reduction cost, is able to cast Reki, History of Kamigawa. He then activates Selvala, and everyone parlays, and he adds some mana and gains some life. He then uses his own Ghost Quarter to take out Untadake, and goes to find a basic snow-covered plains. And then casts Timna the Weaver. Moving to combat, he swings Sigarda at Ben, and after she connects, pays the 1 life in his second main phase to draw a card thanks to Timna's ability. Ben plays an Encroaching Waste for turn, and then casts life from the loam, but has no targets. MJ finally finds and plays their 3rd land, a Wooded Foothills, and cracks it, and takes 1. They then cast the fastest Cultivate I've ever seen, and pass his turn. Malcolm draws 2 and loses 1, and then casts a Sudden Spoiling and targets Max. He then plays an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, and casts Beacon of Unrest to bring back Hirobi, and targets all of Max's creatures with Vish Kal's ability, destroying all of them. He then swings Vish Kal at Max, and passes turn. Max plays a land, and casts Grimoire of the Dead, and then activates it, putting a study counter onto it, and passing to Ben. At the end of turn, Ben flashes out a Dictate of Erebos. Ben plays a land, and casts a Grave Pact because heaven forbid we actually have a board with creatures on it. He then casts a Dread Return, and brings back Cocoa Puffs, and passes to MJ. MJs finally find their stride, and plays another land, and casts a Soul Ring. They then cast Lightning Greaves, and follow up with a Lifecrafter's Bestiary. Malcolm draws 2 and loses 1, and then goes to combat swinging Vish Kal at Max. In his second main phase, he casts Oblivion Ring, and targets Ben's Dictate of Erebos, and passes. Max activates his Survival of the Fittest, discarding Hermit Druid, and finds a series of creatures to put to hand, and then discard, winding up with 7 creatures in the graveyard, and 1 in hand. Ben plays a Baron Moor, which comes in tapped, and casts Machias the Unhallowed. Ben then activates his Mosswarp Bridge to be able to cast It That Betrays, and this leads to a 10-minute conversation involving how things are going to be stacked with the sacrifice effects, and It That Betray finally resolves, followed by a sequence of creatures getting targeted with Vish Kal that leads to no one having any creatures at all. With Kakusho dying, Ben gains 15 while his opponents lose 5. MJ untaps and scries, putting the card on the bottom. They then cast a Darksteel Plate and pass to Malcolm. Malcolm loses his 1 and draws. He then plays a land and casts a Debtor's Knell and passes. Max casts Kaya, Orzhov Usurper, and upticks her to exile Kakusho and Machias from Ben's graveyard, and then passes to Ben. Ben untaps and is ready, casting a spicy Rise of the Dark Realms, and gets back all the creatures from all graveyards into play. There's a lot of stuff going on, so we'll start with Ben finding a forest to put to hand from Nissa, and he chooses to put a +1/+1 counter onto Hirobi with Rishkar, and it dies. But because it doesn't have a +1/+1 counter yet, it dies with Undying and comes back to Malcolm under his control. Ben then plays a forest, and this transforms Nissa, but with the transform ability on the stack, MJ decides to target Nissa with Yavimaya Hollow, which kills her, and because of Undying, puts her back under Max's control thanks to the weird Undying shenanigans that's happening. This has Max searching his library for a forest card, and then they all realize that there are Grave Pact triggers happening at this point, which basically puts back everything under Ben's control because of It That Betrays. Ben then gets to go and find another forest with Nissa coming back, and I'm really having a hard time keeping track of everything that's going on. Once they resolve what I think is all the appropriate amount of triggers, Ben then finally passes. MJ plays a Scalding Tarn and cracks it, losing 1 to find a Taiga. They then cast a Forerunner of the Empire and find Gisath to put to hand, also paying a green to draw a card from the bestiary as they cast it. They then equip the Forerunners with Lightning Greaves and pass to Malcolm. Malcolm has no targets for the Nell trigger on his upkeep, and he casts a Merciless Eviction, and exiles all of Ben's creatures, which puts Max's commander back to the command zone. He then casts a Mirror Entity, and passes to Max, who has been using Survival of the Fittest, to once more fill up his yard. Max plays a land for turn, and starts to cast a Sheoldred the Whispering One. She resolves, and he upticks Kaya, taking away 2 more cards from Ben's graveyard, and passing. Ben plays a land, and casts Vraska Relic Seeker, and then downticks her to take out Debtor's Knell. He then casts the other Vraska, Vraska the Unseen, and uses her to take out the Grimoire of the Dead, and passes to MJ. MJ Windmill slams the Gishath out, and puts some Greaves onto the Dinosaur. They swing it at Ben for 8, who has no choice but to take it, but unfortunately they only hit a single Dinosaur off the trigger, and put a Cacaphodon into play. With nothing else, they pass to Malcolm. At the end of MJ's turn, Malcolm uses Slaughter Pact to take out the Cacaphodon, and then activates the Mirror Entity for 0, triggering Grave Pact and having all of his opponents sacrifice a creature. On Malcolm's upkeep, he then has to pay for the Slaughter Pact delayed trigger, and loses 1 to Arena, and draws from it, and for turn. And once that's all done, casts a Caged Sun, naming black, and passes turn. Max upticks Kaya, taking away life from the Loam and Dread Return from Ben's graveyard, and he then plays his copy of Dakmor Salvage, and once that's out, casts Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, getting to put all legendary permanents from his graveyard into play. This has him getting back Sheoldred, Eily, Crab, Ink Eyes, Hythonia, Dragonlord Dramoka, and his Grimoire. With nothing else, he passes to Ben. Ben plays a High Market and casts Cauldron of Souls. He upticks both Vraskas, making a 2/2 pirate, and then casts his commander for a second time. He uses the Cauldron to give her Persist, and then sacrifices her to the High Market, and pays 2 life to trigger her ability. This has everyone forced to sacrifice 2 creatures, and once those abilities are done, Savra comes back with a -1/-1 counter, and Ben passes. MJ scries and draws, and then casts a Regisaur Alpha. It comes in and they make a 3/3 dinosaur, and then equip the Greaves onto it. They swing both creatures at Malcolm, who has no choice but to take the hit, and MJ then passes. Malcolm draws 2 and loses 1. He plays a land for turn, and then casts his copy of Kakusho, and then a Bloodline Keeper. He passes to Max, who at the end of turn, activates Mosswarp Bridge, putting Hero's Podium into play. Max puts Hythonia back into play with Sheoldred on his upkeep, and casts Thalia Heretic Cathar. Moving to combat, Max swings Sheoldred at Vraska Relic Seeker, Ink Eyes at MJ, Dramoka at Malcolm, and we then move to blocks. Malcolm activates the Vault, giving his creatures lifelink and death touch until the end of turn, and double blocks on Dramoka. MJ starts to negotiate with Max, and convinces him to put all the damage onto Kakusho, as MJ uses the Yavimaya Hollow to put a regeneration shield onto the dragon. Vraska then takes the hit for 11, MJ takes the hit for 10, and Malcolm gains 7 life, and Max then gains 10 life. With the Ink Eyes trigger going off, Max takes MJ's Gisath. And once that's all done, upticks Kaya to exile 2 cards from Malcolm's yard and passes turn. Ben sacrifices a creature to Sheoldred, which triggers his Grave Pact. His opponents then have to sacrifice a creature, and once that's done, he casts Butcher of Malakir because my goodness are there not enough Grave Pacts in this game. Ben then uses Cauldron of Souls to give his board Persist, and he sacrifices the Butcher to High Market, and pays 2 life to have everyone sacrifice a creature. This results in a total of 4 Grave Pact effects, with each player having to lose 4 creatures. Ultimately though, Ben does have a Butcher of Valakir back, with a -1/-1 counter onto it, but no one else has any creatures. Ben then upticks his remaining Vraska, and passes turn. MJ untaps and scries, bottoming it. They play a Reliquary Tower for turn, and cast Sakama Primal Calamity, which untaps all of their lands as they cast it. They then throw the Greaves onto it, which Malcolm responds to with an Unmake. In response to this, MJ activates the Dino to take out both copies of Grave Pact on the field, and Sakama gets exiled, and MJ passes. Malcolm miracles Terminus off the top of his library to put whatever creatures are left on the board to the bottom of their owner's libraries, and recasts Vish Kal in his main phase, followed by Chainer Dimension Master. He activates Chainer, bringing back Kakusho, and sacrifices the dragon to Vish Kal, and has each of his opponents losing 5, and him gaining 15. He then uses Chainer again, bringing back Kakusho once more, and passes to Max. Max uses Survival of the Fittest at the end of turn a bunch more because somehow it's lasted this entire game. Max plays a Temple, and scries, and recasts his commander. He exiles 2 legendary creature cards from his graveyard to activate Kethis, and recasts Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, bringing back all of his legendaries yet again. This time he gets Kambal, Sappy, Drama, Gave, Crab, Inkeyes, Shieldred, Thalia, Dramoka, Ilea, and Hythonia. With nothing else, and I say this fully well that Max has just rebuilt his entire board, he passes to Ben. Ben untaps and upticks Vraska. He casts Fauna Shaman, and then recasts Savra and passes to MJ. MJ untaps and scries the card to the bottom. They then play a tap Path of Ancestry and cast Garruk's Pack Leader, throwing the Greaves onto it. They then cast a Pangasaur and pass to Malcolm. On Malcolm's upkeep, he sacrifices Kakusho to Shieldred's trigger, and the board loses 5 life as Malcolm continues to gain 15. He then draws to the arena and loses 1. He plays a land for turn, which returns MJ's Pangasaur to hand. Malcolm then uses Chainer to reanimate Kakusho and sacrifices to Vish Kal, which in response has Max sacrificing Safi and targeting Dragonlord Dramoka. This has Malcolm responding by removing counters from Vish Kal to take out Ilea. Malcolm then brings back Kakusho again and sacrifices it to Vish Kal, draining the table again for 5 and gaining him 15. Malcolm then cycles through this loop again and again, and is able to do it enough times to be able to take out MJ and Max out, and with no flyers to prevent him from swinging in with Vish Kal, he's able to take out Ben and win the game. Game review time. So once more, was there no blue in this game, which always leads to some interesting plays. Since there are no counters, it means there's a heavier reliance on board wipes and removal, which in this game I felt like there was a lot of. Having multiple Grave Pact effects out was kind of confusing at some point since this was so late in the night, and unfortunately I think a few triggers might have been missed throughout the game. Unfortunately, MJ wasn't really able to showcase Grimlock, because by the time they actually had mana to cast him, they were so far behind that it didn't really make sense. Max actually took a lot of damage from that Untadake, and I'm surprised he kept tapping it, but I guess that's why he used the Ghost Quarter on it to get a Snow-Covered Plains later on. I like how Kethis has their built-in restriction of making you want to play legendary cards, and it has that extra effect of being kind of like Carador where you're able to cast things from your graveyard. I think it's one of the more interesting Abzan commanders, and I'm sad that I don't see it as often. I think Ben is actually one of the very few people who I've ever seen build and play Savra, and he does it very well. But unfortunately for everyone at the table, a very well played Savra typically means there's a lot of Grave Pact effects, and not a lot of creatures on your side of the board. I liked Malcolm's spicy tech with Vish Kal and Hirobi being on the field, and being able to remove no counters but just still target stuff with Vish Kal basically meant it was removal. He did get a lot of Kakusho triggers, and I kinda understand why Kakusho used to be banned as a commander. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.